It's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. We're going to lead off with the NBA fumbling the bag. Their future is right in front of them, and they refuse to acknowledge it. The Grizzlies are apparently calling the Brooklyn Nets. What could that conversation be about? And we're going to appreciate Brandon Clarke on this Wednesday edition of the show. Shout out to Modern Medicine, baby, BC. Back
shout out Canada.
Shout out Canada. We'll talk about that and more on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you 1,000 times for being with us on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. It is I, Ja Mullinax, joined by my co-host, Damichael Cole. He, of course, of the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication. I hope you enjoyed your couple of days off there, partner. I hear from a little birdie named Michael that the Grizzlies are practicing today, so you're back to work. But a nice little NBA Cup break, right? The inexplicable pausing of their regular season, so two random games can happen that nobody cares about because it's the Cup, brother, right? We'll talk more about that here momentarily. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by the good folks over at Game Times. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. As proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Again, we are so grateful to all of you that are already everydayers checking out the podcast each and every time an episode drops. We ask that you continue to do so in audio, video, multiple platforms. Take Damichael and I with you wherever you go. And also, don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube in the bottom right corner, if you're not, we have a free daily newsletter now, Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Our lead topic for today's show will be discussed in that newsletter. Go to lockedondaily.com, get it sent to you each and every single day in your inbox. Words from me, words on the national structure of the NBA, fantasy basketball, so much more. LockedOnDaily.com and subscribe to our free daily newsletter. Damichael, I have a couple of numbers for you from the newsletter. Are you ready?
Okay. I'm all ears. Okay. What you got?
The top 5 teams in the NBA that we talked about on yesterday's show in any given order, right? Oklahoma City, Cleveland, Boston, Dallas, and Memphis. Roughly that order. I might have mixed up one of the two, whatever. Those are the top 5 teams in the NBA according to NBA.com. 2 of those 5 teams also boast the youngest rosters in the National Basketball Association. The Oklahoma City Thunder and the Memphis Grizzlies, who are still among the top 5 youngest teams in the NBA.
After all these years.
Okay?
After
all this time, still up there, okay? From there, the top 5 players on all those teams for Cleveland, Donovan Mitchell. For Oklahoma City, SGA. For the Mavericks, Luka Doncic, right? For the Celtics, you got Jason Tatum. And then for the Grizzlies, Ja Morant. The average age of those 5 individuals is 26 years old. Donovan Mitchell is the old man of the group at 28 years old. Ja Morant, Luka Doncic, both 25. If you're wondering where I'm going with this, I promise I'm almost there. The last major piece from the newsletter, the undisputed truth, none of those players and none of those teams are involving Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Steph Curry, the Phoenix Suns, the Golden State Warriors, the Los Angeles Lakers. Nowhere in the conversation of youth or current winning teams is that part of the process. In fact, all 3 of those teams I just mentioned are currently fighting for their play-in lives, much less their playoff lives. And yet you turn on any national program partner, and they're talking about how LeBron James can get traded to the Golden State Warriors.
They were talking about
up to Steph Curry. Who in the bloody hell could care less about whether or not that happens, except for people that live in the Los Angeles and Golden State markets? Now, trust me, I understand that those are big freaking markets, right? And somebody's going to get in the comments. They're going to hit us up on X, at Joe Mullinax, at Damichael Cole. They're going to say, you just don't get it, man. You just don't get it. The big time cities are where it's at, dude. We live in the 21st century. You can get access to any type of star, any type of market, anywhere on the planet. We got dudes that have shoe deals in China, Damichael Cole. Shoe deals in China. And you're trying to tell me that you can't advertise or nationally flex a game that involves Ja Morant and Luka Doncic last week, two of the best young teams.
Oh, it wasn't
best
even
young
that.
talents.
They
Wasn't
flexed
even
it
that.
off. They flexed
took
it off. It was on that game when it was initially announced was on TNT. They took it off of TNT.
Took it off the schedule. One of the best games of that week.
Yep.
Yesterday's game, I think it's the Thunder and the Mavericks, right? Aside from it being about the cup, brother, it's more about the cup than it is Luka Doncic taking on SGA. So the people like to make a lot about how the NBA's ratings are down, and they try to make it political, which I'm most certainly not going to do. And that for me, it's fairly simple. Yeah. Your best players are also your future players. Before the suspension, Ja Morant was a rocket ship taking off to the moon. He the next great American basketball star. You've got Luka Doncic, who's the next great global basketball star. Well, you might say Nikola Jokic is better than Luka. I would agree with that statement.
Yeah.
Luka pops off your screen more. So you've got two guys that are 25 years old that you flexed out of your national basketball schedule. It makes no sense. It is self-inflicted. That is the major issue with the NBA in terms of ratings. They do not invest in their best young players. If you're scared of Ja Morant and all the stuff that comes with him, he has been a model citizen since all that's occurred, to the best of our knowledge. Haven't heard anything else coming up. He has a better PR firm now, or he figured it out, or somewhere in the middle, right? I don't understand the NBA's marketing strategy. You are focused on guys that are closer to retirement than their prime. The future is in front of you.
Yeah.
Showcase it. End of rant.
Yeah. I hear you, Joe. I hear you, and I completely get where you're coming from for this. I mean, I was watching First Take on yesterday, and after AJ Devonta announced his commitment to BYU, which was probably, I would guess, where you had a lot of viewers tuning in to see that. Right after it, you have a LeBron James and Steph Curry segment when you could have potentially been promoting the NBA Cup and things like that. But let's break this down into a few factors here. Let's go with the facts first off. The facts are simply put, LeBron James and Steph Curry and Kevin Durant are still the biggest draws in the NBA.
Apparently not. The ratings are down, Damichael.
They're still when the Warriors come to Memphis, sells out. When LeBron James and the Lakers come to Memphis, sell out. It's not like that, when everyone else comes. Even down to a guy like Giannis. That game every seat wasn't filled when the Bucks came here earlier this season. So the point that I'm making is those guys are still, the king of the hills, so to speak. There has not been passing of the torch moment unanimously through that. Now, is it because the NBA isn't, kind of expediting that process? I think that's definitely part of the case. But here's the thing too. And I saw someone talking about this, and I want to make sure I worded this correctly. I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way because I think there's some legitimacy to it. But you have different types of stars now in a way. Like the two guys. Okay, let's see if we're on the same page. Who are the two guys that you think have kind of been pushed in recent years? You mentioned one earlier who plays in Memphis. But who are the two guys that have kind of been pushed as kind of like face of the league type of guys recently?
I think Ja Morant, obviously. And then in the absence of Ja Morant this past season, probably Anthony Edwards of Minnesota.
Boom. Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly where we're going. But if you look across all these NBA top 10, top 20, top 30 rankings, you don't see either of those guys in the top 5. Now, terrific, wonderful, great players. But when LeBron James was put as the face of the NBA, clearly the best player. When Steph Curry won back-to-back MVPs and a unanimous MVP, he was clearly, right there with LeBron James, for that, I guess for that kind of being known as that guy. But with all that being said, here's the thing. What you have now is you got Giannis Antetokounmpo, you got Nikola Jokic, you got Luka Doncic, probably the 3 best players in the world. What all 3 of those guys have in common, they were born outside of the United States. Now, to a lesser degree, and less of a generalization here, when you think about players born outside of America, they have a lot of flair to the basketball game in a lot of ways. Like Jokic, the way he passes the ball, and Luka, with a lot of the things that he could do. But the off the court part is not to. That's why we're pushing an Anthony Edwards and a Ja Morant, because Ja is turning into the future of Nike basketball. Anthony Edwards with his AE1 with Adidas, and his commercial in the Atlanta, this Atlanta kid, with this, certain charisma to him. Ja Morant with this certain charisma to him. They're kind of being embraced and being pushed into those. Because you remember when LeBron James first came onto the scene, it was, he's pulling up to high school games in black Hummers. It was Jay-Z, shouting him out. It was all these big prominent faces kind of being behind him. And I think that's what the league's looking for. But you're not going to get that, with the guys like Luka, Giannis, and even in the case of Jokic, because not that they're boring. I don't think they're boring. I just think they are not your traditional American stars. They don't care about certain things as much as, the American stars. Like Jokic, as soon as they won the championship, it was a few days later, he's back in Serbia riding his horses, at a horse show. So it's different priorities around the game of basketball, I think, that kind of impacts the conversation of them being the face. So I think basically what I'm saying here is the face of the NBA is more than likely going to have to be that guy who can be the face of Nike as well, like LeBron has been, or the face of his own brand, the Curry brand, and kind of lifted Under Armour the way that Steph Curry has, or Kevin Durant having one of the best signature shoes of the past decade. So it's, there's certain other factors there, but you don't see anyone like out there trying to buy Jokic signature shoes, or Luka has his, but and Giannis has his, but I don't think, at least to my knowledge, they're not doing as great as we saw KD's, in the past, or LeBron's and things like that. So with all that being said, I think there are some other factors that go into it, but I'm with you, Joe. I do think you got to push these guys. These are the stars of the NBA. If you love hoops, you're gonna love watching them play. Who wouldn't want to watch Shai Gilgeous-Alexander versus Luka Doncic? Like, that's good hoops. But we have to push it, and it's about the NBA kind of being able to showcase that future, because those older guys, they'll be gone really soon.
As stupid as it was on Monday night when the NFL was doing like a Simpsons crossover cartoon game, and they've done that with Toy Story now.
You were watching that.
The NFL understands that you have to try to access different fan bases, right? Yeah, and the most beautiful thing about basketball compared to football, and I'm a football guy, right? Yeah. The thing that makes basketball unique is its ability to go viral, right? You want to talk about cord cutting, and that's one of the reasons ratings are down. That's 100% true. I'm one of the old farts that still has traditional cable. I'm guessing you don't.
Hang in there, Joe.
Off of your age bracket. I'm one of the old ones that still has cable, and I always will. You know why? Yeah. Because I turn it on and it works. I don't have to worry about streaming and buffering. It works when I turn it on. I'm willing to pay that money because I'm old and washed. The point I'm trying to make is the younger generation, they like viral moments. And basketball has a much better ability, more than any other sport, in my opinion, to go viral. Who would you say is probably the most possible to go viral athlete in the entire NBA right now?
The guy who has the videos that have the most viral clips. That's Ja Morant. That's without a doubt.
Invest in your future. Invest in your future, NBA. That's all I'm saying. This has been an awesome topic. I think it's something we can revisit down the road. Hit Damichael and I up on X.
Put the boys on national TV,
at
man.
Joe Mullinax. Put the young guys up. Right? Like, give them a chance to step up to the plate. Coming up next here on Locked On Grizzlies, we have some trade rumors. Always fun to discuss. We'll talk about that next. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Mint Mobile. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can ditch overpriced wireless plans with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Say you get a hunch about a game coming up this weekend, the Commanders over a touchdown favorite against the Saints. Maybe you think it's going to be an even bigger victory for Washington than that. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, FanDuel.com. Join now, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. All right, Damichael. So we have some trade rumors involving the Memphis Grizzlies. Not directly. It's kind of an indirect pointing out of what Memphis might be interested in, involving the Brooklyn Nets. And the Brooklyn Nets continue to be a team that shops, Dorian Finney-Smith, we've talked about on this show numerous times. This name that is being mentioned in particular with the Grizzlies is Cam Johnson. And this is from Evan Sittery at eSittery on X. The Nets trade market for Cam Johnson appears significant. The Grizzlies, the first team mentioned, not that means anything, but Magic, Kings, Lakers, and Warriors, there's some mentioning of those two squads, are among the contending teams. That's funny, right? Again, great example of what we just got done talking about, who have checked in with the Nets on their sharp shooting wing. If Brooklyn trades Johnson, they have the market to get what they desire. Cam Johnson checks a lot of boxes. For me, I see Cam Johnson as the #1 option from Brooklyn. I think you can make an outside argument for Dennis Schroeder as well. But Cam Johnson is the prize piece. He's on an extended contract. I think the next couple of years he's signed. You can bring him in as a combo forward. The Grizzlies have shown in recent games and recent weeks that wings like Jake LaRavia, wings like Santi Aldama, combo forward, Santi more big than wing. But if you're a bigger wing perimeter player, you can thrive in this system. Cam Johnson seems like he would really check that box. What do you think? I have an idea of what I would pay. I got yelled at a couple of weeks ago for saying I would give up a couple of first-round picks. But if the market is that hot for Cam Johnson, I think that's still enough. But that might be the floor of what the Nets can expect to try to get for this guy.
Yeah, I mean, people understand how the economy works. It's called supply and demand. At the end of the day, you think a guy's worth something, but the demand for that player can raise the value. And that's what you're going to see this trade deadline approaches with Cam Johnson in particular. He is playing the most coveted role amongst teams who are looking for missing pieces in the NBA. If you look around the league, all teams, you can never have enough of it. Teams desire elite shooting and great defending, especially if you're a low usage guy. Cam Johnson's never been a high usage guy. It's a little bit higher in Brooklyn, but he played in Phoenix, came off the bench. They ended up getting rid of Jay Crowder. Jay Crowder requested the trade because he took his starting spot, and played well there. Got traded for Kevin Durant, and he's thrived in Brooklyn. Here's the thing with me, and I've spoken on Cam Johnson in recent days. Perfect fit from the standpoint of, if I'm thinking of closing lineups, and you got Dez out there, you got Cam out there, you got Jaren out there, and you got these two elite shooters. We just saw Dez close that game out in Boston, right? And now with Cam Johnson, I mean, he's made shots in the NBA Finals. You get two really plus shooters. Cam Johnson, 6'8", 6'9", really good defender. He's a bigger guy. He can play the 3. He can play the 4. He can play, the 4 in stretches when you want to move Jaren to the 5 and go with a small ball lineup. All these different avenues to appreciating his game. But getting back to what I think the cost would be for him, I'm thinking not too far off from you, Joe. I think it's probably a couple first, and then you got to make the money work. So by making the money work, you're potentially dangling, one of your valuable role players in that case, and some of the bigger, I guess, quote unquote, role player contracts that the Grizzlies have available are guys like Brandon Clarke, are guys like Marcus Smart. And in that case, when we're picking between the two, I'm leaning Marcus Smart. So that's a contract that potentially will have to make the money work. I think. What's the number for Cam Johnson, Joe? I forget off the top of my head, but I think he's around 21 million. But I know Marcus Smart is at 20 million. So
yeah, Cam Johnson, and I have Spotrac. I always mispronounce it. 23.6 million
23.
is what they've got him making this year. But he has a unique contract partner that next year it descends. He's making 21.5 million next season. And then it goes back up again. It goes up to 23.6, what he's making this year. So a unique deal for Cam. But the point is, he's under contract for Marcus Smart-esque money over the next 2 years.
You do Marcus Smart. I think Marcus Smart's around 20 million, and you attach one more asset to it. I think that asset would probably look. We know Jake is playing well, but it's the last year of the contract, and if that's the deal that's out there. He's playing well enough where another team can see the value in picking him up. It's looking like a situation where the Grizzlies more than likely just won't have, room to bring Jake LaRavia back. Like, again, I've heard it from sources around the Grizzlies that there is interest in bringing Jake LaRavia back. But at the same time, my eyes tell me that Vince Williams will be healthy at some point. And then you'll get G.G. Jackson back at some point. And it's like, how are you going to mix in all these really good players and finding playing time, especially when you got Jalen Wells factoring in as well. So that makes the most sense to me. But if you look at Jake LaRavia's numbers right now, that's not a guy that you probably want to part with because he's just playing so well. This is the best basketball he's played in his career. But again, you talk about getting a guy like Cam Johnson, you're going to pay the cost if you want to be the boss. So the only downside to Cam Johnson with me is the entry side of it. And I know that's something that's, we got to talk about, in the Grizzlies lore here, because he has, going back to his college days, he's battled some injuries, from time to time. And he's not like, I remember when Mikal Bridges, when we were talking about him, we were talking about the fact that he never missed a game in the NBA. This is not that. So with all that being said, I still think he's worth the risk if the opportunity, if that is the deal that presents itself. I think that Memphis definitely, and there are going to be some other factors, like Vince Williams hasn't played basketball pretty much for a long time. You need Vince Williams to come back and look good for me to be comfortable in trading Jake LaRavia. If Vince Williams comes back and he's hooping like Vince Williams last year and, he got a little extra pump in his step or whatever, okay, I could stomach it. But if Vince Williams is coming back and, he ain't looking like Vince Williams of the past and you feel like it's going to take a little bit more time, now you got a riskier decision to make. But all things considered, you want a guy like Cam Johnson, you're going to have to pay up. And the Grizzlies aren't the only team, as you just said, willing to pay up. So you're going to have to make an offer that stands out.
I do think a positive for Memphis of those teams that were mentioned there by Evan, I do think the Grizzlies have the capacity to present perhaps the best offer. It's not like the Lakers have a ton of draft capital. Phoenix certainly doesn't have the best draft capital. Golden State does have some draft picks. Obviously,
they can make some
Kuminga. They can make things competitive. The Magic are in a similar boat. But I would have a hard time believing, Marcus Smart, whatever young player they want outside of maybe G.G. Jackson, Jake LaRavia would make sense to me. And then a first rounder or two, I think that gets Cam Johnson. Is that too much, though? Let us know in the comments. Let us know on X, at Damichael C, at Joe Mullinax. Hit us up. I have a feeling this is a topic we're going to be revisiting. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, a quick appreciation for one Brandon Clarke, acknowledging the miracles of modern medicine and a rare occasion. I believe
I'm hearing these words right now.
An occasion where I admit that I was wrong. So stick around. You rarely hear that here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Game Time. Basketball is awesome, don't get me wrong, but I love watching hockey live. The chill of the ice, the slam of the boards. I love going and watching the Washington Capitals when I get a chance. I know Damichael's a big Nashville Predators fan, or maybe not. I don't know. But you know. Shout out to the
Preds, man. Shout out to
the Preds. Shout out to Smashville. You can go check out the Predators, Capitals, or any other hockey team using the Game Time app. You can use Game Time Picks, which is carefully curated selections, making it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. You can also get panoramic views from the seats in the app before you buy them. You can toggle on all-in pricing, allowing you to see the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And your purchase can be covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. We'll get out of here on this, Damichael, talking about Brandon Clarke. Again, we started with some numbers. Let's end with some numbers.
Let's do it.
Efficiency differential. This is per cleaning the glass. Every number I'm about to give is per cleaning the glass. That's my favorite site for this stuff.
Yeah.
Team points scored per 100 possessions minus team's points allowed per 100 possessions. Brandon Clarke is a plus 9.9. That is good for the 87th percentile in the National Basketball Association. His offense is not as good as it could be. He's in the 45th percentile for that. But his defensive numbers are staggering. Minus 10.7. That means that opposing offenses score 10.7 less points per 100 possessions when Brandon Clarke is on the floor. Teams also shoot 4.5% worse from the field, adjusting for threes. Again, this is per cleaning the glass when Clarke is on the floor. Brandon Clarke is back. Okay, and it's hard.
Joe, say that one more time. Make sure I heard that right, because I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna, as you like to say, I'm not gonna go on the parade too much. But if we could rewind back like 9 months, But continue. I'll let you continue.
If you rewind back 9 months, I believe I might have floated out ideas of having to tag first-round picks just to get somebody to take on Brandon Clarke's contract, because I was that concerned about the Achilles issue, right? And I think there was an article that came out recently. You want to give credit to Drew Hill, I think, of the Daily Memphian, that wrote about it, talking about Brandon Clarke feeling the significance of that injury and how he no longer has to worry about his leg. It shows on the court. The Grizzlies are something like, and while you're sharing your thoughts, Damichael, I'll try to find the exact stat. When Jaren Jackson Jr. and Brandon Clarke start together, there's something like 12-2. They're one of the very best defensive front courts in the National Basketball Association, and Clarke's starting to find his floater again, starting to find his offensive efficiency again, slowly but surely. The defense is most certainly there, and you could argue the defense is better than it has ever been. You mentioned in the prior segment, Brandon Clarke or Marcus Smart would be the two names that would have to get attached to something like Cam Johnson. For me, it's a no contest. I'm holding on to Brandon Clarke, which 9 months ago I would not have said.
Wow, I love hearing this. But speaking of things I love, I mean, watching Brandon Clarke play is a treat. This is a guy who I always speak about players understanding their roles, because that's so important. In the NBA, a lot of times you see guys who become bigger than their, old roles, and egos get involved and things like that. But Brandon Clarke has been in Memphis pretty much as long as anyone other than Jaren Jackson Jr. He got here with Ja Morant. He's played a reserve role, and he's accepted that role to the point where at one point he said he preferred coming off the bench than starting, and he's thrived in it. And we talk about how well he plays with Jaren all the time. What about how well he plays with Ja Morant? I mean, you look at that game, was it the Boston game where he had 18 points, 9 of 11 shooting from the field? When you watch how he was scoring, a lot of that was Ja Morant saying, "Hey, here you go, BC, just finish the job." And that is helping him, I think, kind of get back to where he was. Like you said, the offense is where he's progressing a little bit slower. The defense, he's there. I mean, and I thought it would be the other way around, which is funny because, Joe, we were talking about it. If we're talking 9 months ago, how does lateral quickness look and things like that. The pop is still there. Like we don't see him, doing crazy dunks over people or anything like that. But have you seen him when the ball hits the back iron and it goes in the air and guys are jumping up for the rebound? Dude's like an eagle in the air. Like, I mean, even if he doesn't come down with it with two hands, he's just tipping it out somewhere. And there was a lot of that against the Mavs. There was a lot of that against the Celtics. And I mean, he's a soldier in there. Like Brandon Clarke, he's a really good player for what the Grizzlies need. And it's funny because you mentioned it before the show, and I'll kind of lead you into it here, but it kind of puts you a little bit more at ease with the development process of Zach Edey. I think, and maybe some people still would prefer that Zach Edey, when he gets back and, he gets a couple weeks removed from the ankle injury, he's playing 28 minutes, 29, whatever the case may be. He's not going to play 28 minutes. 25. I'll say 25. He ain't playing 28. Not in Taylor Jenkins' world yet. 25 minutes. If he's playing 25 minutes, I think people would be great with that. But now you're in a situation where you can play him 22. And Brandon Clarke could play, 22, 24, 26 potentially as well. And you get solid play at the 5 over the full course of a game. Brandon Clarke is a very important player for the Grizzlies to reach their goals.
Imagine a true second unit of Scottie Pippen Jr., Marcus Smart, Jake LaRavia, Santi Aldama, and Zach Edey. That's a freaking problem because you want to attack the rim, you've got the league's tallest player waiting for you there. And you want to talk about offensive concerns, which, maybe there are some potentially. You want to throw the ball to the 7'4" guy down on the block? That's probably a lot easier to do with those pieces around him, both in terms of floor spacing and in terms of not having a ball dominant player like a Jaren or a Ja that needs it in their hands. Throw it to the hand can make a bit of a return, and Zach Edey going against most reserve bigs is not going to end well for most reserve bigs. So I think there's an avenue and a window there when Edey does come back. First off, it allows for him to truly come back healthy. You don't need to rush him back. Secondly, you bring him off the bench, play him 18 to 20 minutes, build some confidence. That should be the focus now. The Grizzlies are almost certainly, barring catastrophic injury, the Grizzlies are going to be a playoff team, right? You are planning for playing your best basketball in April. It is December. You've got 4 months still in this season. Obviously, there's an all-star break. We're in the league-mandated NBA Cup break right now, except for 8 teams. You're in a place where you're going to get some time off. Finding ways to get to playing your best basketball 4 months from now should be the goal. And it allows for more patience developing Edey. That is a big piece of this for Brandon Clarke. That's an impressive front court with Jaren and Clarke and Edey. Santi Aldama is in that mix too. So now you're going from Zach Edey, who most people projected, including us, to be your starting center. You can make a legitimate argument that Edey is your 4th best big. And if that is the case,
throw your boy Huff in there too. The Wahoo,
he's your 5th best big. But anyway, the point is, it gives you flexibility. It gives you reasons to believe that this team has the capacity to do some pretty special things this season. So shout out to Brandon Clarke. It's rare for me to admit when I'm wrong, but at least it's a good reason. Let us know how you're feeling about BC in the comments. Hit us up on X. We'd love to talk more about Brandon. If you just want to point out that you've never heard me say I'm wrong before, and I did just now, you can let me know.
No, Joe, you're pretty fair when you're wrong. You're hard on yourself sometimes. You've admitted when you've been wrong before. This ain't the first time. They every day is know it.
When you've been Joe Mullinax for 37 years, partner, you can be hard on yourself every once in a while. But not to get too heavy here. This isn't a BetterHelp episode. On tomorrow's episode of Locked On Grizzlies, Damichael Cole will be flying solo. It's his solo show for the week. Excited to listen, partner. You've got practice coming up. We talked about that earlier in the program. Grizzlies back to practice. And we purposely left off a topic. We talked about trades, but we talked about the Nets. There's another pretty big rumor that burst yesterday that might be worth talking about. It would be one of the funniest teams ever if Jimmy Butler came to Memphis.
Yeah, might have to look into that one a little bit. There's as you said, there's a big financial cost that comes with that. But as I said earlier, it costs to be the boss. So is it worth it? We'll talk about it.
I like it. I'm looking forward to it. Make sure you're checking us out on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, literally anywhere you get a podcast. Become an everydayer. Check out Damichael and I each and every time that an episode drops. Also, make sure you're subscribing to the Locked On Grizzlies newsletter, lockedondaily.com. Click on the Grizzlies link, subscribe, get words from me about Grizzlies topics, national NBA topics, and fantasy basketball, all sorts of great stuff. Go to lockedondaily.com. For Damichael, I'm Joe. We'll catch you guys back here tomorrow. Until then, stay locked in. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, wherever you get podcasts. Hit us up on X, chat in the comments. We'll catch you next time on Locked On Grizzlies.